Hello, my name is Jason. I'd like to welcome you to my Learn to Draw Portrait series here on YouTube channel Eclectic Asylum Art. Now, I know what many of you are probably thinking, how can I draw a portrait when I can barely draw a stick figure? Well, we'll get to that in a minute, but first, what if I were to say to you I was going to help you learn to play a musical instrument? All of you are probably thinking, yeah, I could learn to play that. I mean, that's possible. I mean, I have the confidence to do that. First you'd learn to hold the instrument, to reproduce some notes, and then you would learn to read a little bit of sheet music, and next thing you know, with a little practice, you'll be able to play a song that someone else can recognize. Of course, you probably won't be able to play with the Soul of Louis Armstrong or the Passion of Jimi Hendrix, but still, you'll be able to play a song that someone else can recognize. The way I see it, learning to draw and learning to play music are very similar. They both require a tool or an instrument to create a sensory experience and a little practice to become comfortable with that tool, but they're a lot the same. Now, I'm sure most of you are probably still thinking, yeah, I could learn to play music, but drawing a portrait, that's impossible. I can't do that. Well, I'm here to tell you it is possible. It doesn't take some magical, mystical talent that you have to be born with. The only real difference in our confidence between learning to play music versus learning to draw a portrait is an understanding of ourselves and our senses. The reason we all believe that we can learn music is that there is an understanding, to our sense of sound. 2,000 years ago in ancient Greece, a guy named Pythagoras discovered a basic math of harmonics and vibration. With that understanding, we were able to develop musical theories, harmonic instruments, a language to music. To put it simply, there's a history of science in music. Now, as individuals, we probably don't understand all the science and the math mumbo-jumbo, but it gives us confidence, in learning to play that music. It's, there's a history, there's a cultural understanding and application of this science that gives us that confidence. Now, if that science can give us confidence to play music, then that same science should be able to give us a confidence to learn to draw. The thing is, unlike the science of sound, the science of vision is basically a baby. I mean, a couple hundred years ago, people were, talking about a magical power of the eye that, this essence could reach out and grab the essence of something else so that we could see it. In fact, our sight as a sense is such a powerful sense that it's entwined in what we call, reality. Have you ever heard anyone say, I'll believe it when I see it? Fortunately for, anyone who has ever dreamed of learning to draw a portrait, in the past few decades, scientists have begun research and they're slowly unraveling the neuroscience of sight. The reason this series is called Learn to Draw Portraits instead of just, learn to draw is because of science. I want you to take your hand and place it on the back of your head. Now, most people believe that you see with your eyes. In reality, we see with our brain. This whole part of your head that you're covering, the brain underneath there, all of that is used to see. If we didn't have a skull protecting our head, we could go, poke around in the back of our brain and see flashes and visions and all kinds of crazy stuff. Our eyes are open, but, the brain is what does the seeing. If there is one thing our brains, are wired to see more than anything else, it's the human face. Imagine being a baby, opening your eyes for the first time. I mean, you have to, take cues, seeing your mother, recognize her eyes, her lips, her mouth, all the facial features, social animals. It's recognizing the face as one of our most important forms of communications. Being able to read someone's face gives us insight into what they're feeling, what they're thinking. you know, unfortunately, this wiring of nerves that is in our brain that gives us the ability to recognize all this in the face, it just gets in the way when it comes to drawing a portrait. You know, this series is designed to help you learn to push away all that clutter, the wiring of the brain, and see the world differently. You know, in future episodes, we won't be talking about drawing ovals and spheres and cones and forms. You know, we're not going to talk about the technique of, you know, the eyes are halfway down the head and faces so many eyes wide, or the edges of the lips line up with the eyes. These techniques are great, but they're based on ideals and symbology. You know, our brain is already wired with the symbology and ideals of the face. I mean, this just adds more to the clutter. I mean, let me show you. Okay, the symbology, when we think of what we're going to be drawing, let's say we're thinking we're drawing an eye. Everyone knows what an eye looks like, or at least we think we know what an eye looks like. You know, an eye is quite simply, you know, that and an eyeball, and every eye has eyelashes. You know, eyelashes are little lines because hairs are little lines. So we have two eyes. That's easy. A nose. Noses are kind of tricky. There's nostrils. Oops, forgot the eyelashes on this eye. And of course, there's eyebrows. Let's see. Nose is easy to draw from the side. Let's see. Two nostrils. Lips. Lips are real easy. It's like those kissy lips. I mean, this is how the brain sees. This is how we think of things. It gets in the way of what we're drawing. Ears. Well, that's the front of a face. Well, an ear is easy to draw from the side. I mean, if you've ever... Yeah, well, to put an ear here, that's going to look funny, so... there we go, that's a side. Well, now, lips. Lips. Put the lips back on. It still looks funny. Hair, we need hair. Hairs are little tiny lines, so we do this. You know, basically, if we draw by symbology, we get something that looks like a mix between a child and a what a Picasso painting looks like. What happens is the brain is getting in the way, and in future episodes, what we're going to do is strip away all this brain's wiring that's getting in the way, and we're going to replace it with, you know, some techniques that draw from vision science. This series is designed for everyone, so if you don't know anything about art or drawing, you know, the first few episodes are going to teach you how to use some tools. It's going to teach you some terminology. You know, for those of you that already have a background in art, you know, it might be a refresher course with a little bit of a new twist, but eventually we're going to get to the fun stuff, where we'll have interactive videos, where we'll actually be able to draw portraits that look like someone recognizable, and you'll be able to show these off to your friends and family, and with practice you'll be able to draw anyone's portrait using techniques that I will show you in future episodes. So, you know, let's have fun, and I look forward to seeing you in the future.